This is the MVP podcast where we talk to the most valuable people in sports. My name is Courtney Steven, and today's MVP is Desi Abeyta, a high performance dietitian who's worked with the likes of the Milwaukee Brewers of the MLB, Men's Health Magazine, and the Red Bull. Now, if you ask him, there's no one secret formula that unlocks elite performance. But if you can get this one thing right, everything else becomes easier. Whether you're an athlete or you're in the boardroom, you're going to love this episode. And when you hit that magic moment, please hit the subscribe button. That's how we get more great guests on this show. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Desi. How would you describe what it is you do? Like, what is your superpower? Why do people call you when they need help?
You got hit me with a really good question right off the fucking bat. All right, let me answer your question in some storytelling. Okay, so I'm a Latino dietitian entrepreneur. I became a dietitian maybe like 8 years ago. I know this because I found out that I was having a kid when I started my residency and my dietetic internship. So I started in the field with eating disorders, and I always tell dietitians this, and anyone who wants to be in the fitness realm, is spend some time in this demographic and you'll learn the value of empathy and you'll learn the value of communication. So Courtney, if you're asking me like, what's my superpower, bro, it is 100% empathy and very, very elite communication, because I think one of the biggest gems that I learned a really long time ago is that if you can sit in people's darkness and the complexities that make them human beings, then you can do beautiful things. And so if that's my superpower, Courtney, I would say that, man, because I love that. I think if you can connect with someone, whether you're working with athletes, whether you're working with your communities as a personal brand, if people feel heard and they feel like they can trust you, I mean, that goes back to the age old saying of like, as an entrepreneur, you want to be known, liked, and trusted. And I think if I look at like, what's my superpower, it's 100% those things.
And so you talked about dealing with people when they're at low points. And generally we look at athletes and we feel they're gladiators, they're heroes. They've worked on themselves for all these years, struggled in the darkness so they could shine in the spotlight. But would you say from your experience that athletes deal with similar, the mental side of not just eating and food, because I think food is a real emotional thing, right?
Yeah.
Do athletes deal with the same struggles with their diet and with their mindset around their well-being and their health that non-athletes do in your experience?
Bro, like I so agree with what you're saying. Because I mean, if we look at it from like a public perspective, like we look at athletes as these gladiators or these people that are at the top of their game and don't make mistakes. I was literally just on a trip with our global skate camp. So like these are cats anywhere from ages 14 to like almost up to 30 that are coming and training and about to qualify for the Olympics. So they travel almost year round for their sport. And one of the things that I felt was super interesting in chats that we had from a mental performance standpoint was helping them to understand that, yes, your habits and your rituals absolutely do matter and your performance matters, but it can't be everything. And I think what I tend to see on the elite level athlete side is that sometimes food and training and recovery tend to be so like perfectionistic that it ends up doing them more harm than it does good. And I think trying to help them to reprogram that, yes, you're at the top of your game, you're doing really, really dope shit in your life, and also you're a human being. Those pieces are so hard to break through with an athlete. I mean, I'm kind of talking to the choir here, Courtney. I mean, so you did 7 seasons in professional football. Like I can imagine that you probably feel the same way or have experienced this to some degree.
I mean, I've played over 100 games. Now the cleats are firmly hung up. Let me tell you, I haven't seen a cold tub in quite some time, but no, it's right. And there's definitely there's days when you got to go to work when it really doesn't feel like your best day. But I heard a quote recently. It was kind of cold blooded, but it hit me. And it said, you're not a great athlete if you need to feel good to play well. And it was like, I mean, obviously everyone wants to get into the optimal state, find the slight edges, find those opportunities to get into the zone. But if you're not in the zone, can your people still count on you to show up? I feel like that's what you're hitting on is that we focus on it so much that if anything's off just a little bit, it can actually have an opposite effect.
Dude, it's a crazy balance. I mean, we're throwing quotables around too. I mean, this is one that I love to use. So like nutrition and performance, if we look at it just from the standpoint of helping someone to program their habits and their rituals in a way that helps them to skyrocket their performance and their recovery. So nutrition and performance will not make an average athlete an elite athlete. However, nutrition and performance, in this case, lack thereof, will make an elite athlete very, very fucking average. And I think that's one of the pieces that is so hard to balance, because like we want to empower the athletes that we work with as sports dietitians and professional dietitians. We want to empower them with the information, and we want to help them to get over the mental roadblocks through mental performance. But at the same time, like it's a really good balance between hijacking the perfectionism and then also allowing them to be human. And I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways of what I find with people who are at the top of their game and understand what it takes, is just that, is that balance of, let me go ahead and perform, but let me make sure that I have these other avenues that I can still get my needs met outside of my given sport. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I find of like people who are at top of their game know how to balance that extremely well.
Yeah. And so it seems to me that your mindset is on overall wellness, preparation, and performance, not just the diet. That the diet's just a slice of it, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of use something like the vernacular inside of like professional dietitian speak is like, there's 3 phases to an athlete. There's the preparation, there's the performance, and then there's the recovery. And we base everything around those 3 tiers, because if someone has that down pat, like some really phenomenal things happen.
Mm-hmm. And so would you also be coaching people up on like sleep and like the routines, like when you get up in the morning, things that you do to prepare to, obviously when I wanted to play, I had routines that I liked. They weren't necessarily the best, but they got me in the right mindset. Like, for example, always woke up on game day, I had the same breakfast, more or less. Like, because if you go out of town and you can't get to your go-to restaurant, you want to be able to find something familiar. So I always just have French toast. I used to have eggs over hard, yolk broken. I used to have some home fries. I had a huge breakfast. I would have fruit, all kinds of stuff. And then I wouldn't really eat anything until the game. And then right before the game, I had like a pack of Skittles.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
hey, listen, like those are quick digesting carbs. So like it's on my programming with people. Like, cool, if you like candy, like right before a comp or something like that, and you know you do well with it, like, dude, we're feeding the muscles in the brain. I'm chill with it.
Yeah. So is there any like things that you suggest people absolutely don't do, or is it okay to kind of, if it works? Because you remember Marshawn Lynch, he was famous for having some
Hennessy
candy on the side. Well, yeah, that too.
Yeah,
he was drinking. He was drinking. Hey, I was gonna say he had Skittles on the sideline, but whatever gets you in the zone allows you to perform to a degree. Is it like you got to live a little and just not be a robot?
You really do. I mean, Courtney, you mentioned the sleep piece. Like we can't not talk about nutrition, performance, recovery without actually looking at sleep. I think like I'm the type of dietitian that's like, hey, all foods are going to fit within the parameters of what you need in order to perform. Now, like there's a balancing act. Like if you're just crushing Skittles like a DK Metcalf, like I still don't believe that his diet is his diet.
No, he came out of an egg, man. He is not a human being.
He came out like that. He came out running a 4.2. Like it's just nuts to me. So like he's kind of an outlier, right? But like I think one of the things that like I help athletes to understand is not only just the power of sleep, but the power of routine, because like there's a lot of information out there. And I think everything that we've ever wanted to understand, like we have readily available at our fingertips. But for me, like I just go down to the basics. Like, can we create sleep regularity around the same time that you go to bed and the same time that you wake up? Because for you, Courtney, like you're talking about on game days, smash some French toast, some home fries, some fruit, like that's kind of your routine. I almost think that sleep, nutrition, any of our recovery tactics, breath work, like it has to be a part of your ritual so that it allows you to get into that competitive mindset. That, to be honest, like, dude, it's why I started my podcast. Like to me, the psychology of an athlete became such a huge interest of me because I started observing like what they were doing, and everyone kind of has their pieces, but there's pillars. They understand the value of sleep. They understand the value of nutrition. the value of how they move, and also the value of how they think. And to me, dude, it's like, it's ongoing case studies for me when I just like talk with an athlete or work with an athlete or talk about an athlete on a podcast. It's so cool, bro.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you work with other types of high performers as well. So just continuing on that same thread, it's like, what types of lessons or similarities or what analogies are you pulling out of that sports world and giving to the other high performers? Because now, like I say, my cleats firmly hung up on the wall, collecting just a nice amount of dust right now. Like they are not coming down. But what kind of things should I be taking from that athletic career and applying now that I'm trying to be sharp in meetings? I'm trying to have powerful, high energy conversations. I'm trying to get in front of large groups of people and be persuasive and convey energy and confidence. What kind of things can I bring from that athletic world into the boardroom?
Bro, I think one of the things that is fantastic to observe that I'm not seeing that these high performers, these entrepreneurs and these creatives aren't really thinking about is if we look at the athlete, they're at the top of their game. But if we start to pick apart what they're doing, they have performance teams that are attached to what they're doing. They likely have a dietitian. They have a strength coach. They have an athletic trainer. They have a mental performance coach. So to me, if we look at just the entrepreneur or the creative, why aren't we putting teams of people who know more than we do that can help us get to that level? So like, it kind of goes back, Courtney, to community and your environment, because if you want to put yourself in a place where you're high performing, you're mentally well, you're purpose driven, you're going to have to surround yourself by 5 other people, because more times than not, over time, you're going to become that 6th. So I think for me, the community piece and the environment is such a huge cue. And again, another thing that I find too is like, it's sleep. Like this whole like weird mantra of like, I'll sleep when I die. Like I gotta hustle. Again, another quotable here, like another one that I like to use with athletes and like entrepreneurs that I work with is like trying to work through the night on 4 hours and then getting up for a 5 a.m. exercise or strength session, thinking that you're going to be at your best just because you're moving your body, is like stepping over $100 bills to pick up quarters. And I think those like foundational habits that most people miss out on are like the biggest things that I find like that's actually the money that's left on the table. And if we're looking at it from an entrepreneurship perspective or a creator perspective, we want money, right? We want to be able to gain generational wealth. And the thing that leaves things on the table is like actually what you do in your day to day. So I tend to think your environment and sleep, and then beyond that, the nutrition and other things are probably the biggest things that I'm seeing.
Yeah, so it's like basic stuff that doesn't take $1 million. Like literally go to bed.
It really doesn't.
Just like go to bed.
Just go to bed. Like, like nothing good happens after like 11 p.m. Like let's not get it twisted.
That's the first thing they told us at training camp in college. They're like, listen, there's nothing good that happens after midnight. Find your way back to the dorms, please. Well, I guess that was a little bit more of just like good college advice, is to stay out of trouble. But you talk about being a creator and being a high performer. You mentioned your podcast. What's your podcast all about, and what kind of people do you talk to on there?
Yeah, man. Just like I said, like having worked with high level athletes, I just became almost obsessed with, I want to share what these people are doing because I feel like it can help in a phenomenal amount of ways. So the name of my podcast is the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. And so it's taps into the habits and the rituals of high level athletes and entrepreneurs, where we celebrate their like, can't believe I made it moments. And honestly, Courtney, for me, it was one of the projects, and I'm sure any podcaster out there can probably raise their hand and be like, yep, that's me. Or even someone who's sitting on an idea that hasn't jumped on it can probably resonate with this story. Dude, I did almost 4 to 5 years of like downloading PDFs, taking courses on how to start a podcast. Like I just spent so much time thinking about it, and it was so frustrating. So I got to a point back in 2019, it was on my birthday, December 30th. I was like, you know what? Like, I'm done talking shit. Like, I'm done talking about how I want to start a podcast. Like, I'm just going to record and just see what happens. And so since then, dude, it's been absolutely life-changing. And I think it has more to do with the manifestation process of honoring your ideas, because I can tell you that there's so many people out there that aren't. And I think for me, as I continue to just push episodes out weekly, like that's the main story that I just want to like show, like, listen, you can do hard things. We all can. Like, we're just getting in our own way. And I think for years and years, I did that to myself. And honestly, this podcast at this point, Courtney, is just a gift to myself.
Mm-hmm. And I bet you it's good for your business. It's good for your personal brand, especially something I feel like could apply to athletes who they don't know how long they have the audience that they do. So they might as well cultivate it, build something, be known for something else. Somebody said to me the other day, man, you're not just a dumb football player. And like they meant it as a
Like,
compliment, but it was like the
thanks.
most backhanded compliment they could possibly
Condescending.
offer. But I appreciate where it came from, because on the outside, you see someone who runs around doing grunt work, tackling people all day or whatever it might be, kicking a ball. It gives you a chance to have depth and different dimensions. So you started this podcast, like you said, just hit record. What kind of advice you have for people who are thinking about, where do I even begin?
I mean, listen, I think the bells and whistles are always the things that hang people up. What type of mic should I get? What type of camera? You know, how am I going to post content? Like it's all of the bells and whistles. And really, to me, what I tend to find, and this is just pulled from my own life as well, it's the distractions. To me, if you can just create consistency around your message, you're going to get better. It's the same thing, Courtney, on your side, I'm sure. Like, the more reps that you got, the more playing time that you got. So it just goes back to this. I think you can pull from athletes or people that people really look up to and like really start to study, like, what are they doing? Yes, they probably have a lot of teams around them and whatnot, but they got started. And it sounds so cliche, but it's literally just, you have to get started. You have to create consistency. This has to become a part of your standard in regards to how you operate with honoring this idea.
Yeah. And so you find lots of guests for your podcast. I'm sure also you're an entrepreneur. You have to prospect and network. So what kind of, like, you're a personable guy. So it would appear that it's easy for you to talk to people, but how are you networking? Like, whether that's for your business, whether that's to get people on your podcast, are you using your podcast to get people for your business? Like, how do you become known? How do you step into traffic so you can get hit by an opportunity? Like, how does that work?
Oh, I'm gonna bite that, dude. I like that. Listen, I think this is a lost art as social media continues to grow, but it's like actually being social on social. I mean, look at this opportunity right now. Like, for me, I've been in search of being a person of color myself. I've been in search of like uplifting our communities. So I was just on podcast threads the other day, and this dude, Courtney, came up with like a really cool, just thought-provoking question. And I was like, this dude seems dope as hell. Like, he has a podcast. It's called the MVP podcast. Shout out to Threads. Shout out to podcast Threads. And then I just like hit you up, and we were like, yo, this sounds dope. Like, let's connect. So I think the lost art there is literally just being social on social. And then obviously outside of that, there've definitely been opportunities where I might have just like a random conversation. And I'll tell you too, like, being a part of the Red Bull brand as well, like, that makes it really easy because you get to learn and connect with so many high performing individuals in their own right, where you're just like, quick conversation, like, damn, I like your vibe. Like, yo, I got a podcast. Would you love to be on? And to be honest, like, most people will say, hell yeah. So I think like it really does have a lot to do with, one, being social on social. And then I think the other piece is just catch a vibe, dude. Like, I don't know. It's not a science. Like, I think we've all been in those conversations where you're like, I could be friends with this person 100%. And then on the opposite end where it's like, this conversation needs to end now.
Yeah, that's real. Yeah, you mentioned Red Bull and some of the banners that you work with. You know, they say when you're in the NFL, it's like you got that shield to protect you, or like that NFL logo, right? It means something. Red Bull is an internationally recognized brand. And you've been able to work with them for quite some time. So, and among other brands in like South by Southwest, TEDx, you've done a bunch of different things.
Homework.
What's the
I respect it.
Come on, man. I'm a journalist. I might look like an athlete, but hey, so
I love it.
What's the origin story there, and how did you get into that opportunity there with Red Bull?
Bro, like, so like as a dietitian, like one of the classic things is it's, you know, almost predominantly white. So being a man of color in the field, like I think I represent 1%. So getting into the field as a registered dietitian, we're not paid well. I don't like the metrics are out there. They're in the ethos. Like it's not news. So like very early on, like I figured out, I was like, you know what? I love food. I love performance. I love talking about these things. I love having conversations with really interesting people and just being like a really safe and empowering space. So like, I know that I wanted to do something creative. So to be honest, bro, like it kind of came around the same time. So Men's Health hit me up and we're like, hey, we're about to release a story. You know, do you have any thoughts on X, Y, and Z topic? So I ended up leveraging that opportunity into just speaking with the editor, and him and I checked the vibe. We got along really well. And that's what kind of opened up this book deal. And for me, like in the negotiation process, I was like, hey, this isn't a great deal of money. Like, I'm really thankful for it. Like, this is my first authored book. Like, this will be really dope. Can I leverage an ongoing opportunity with you guys? And so at the time, like, I didn't really know like what that was going to look like, and they were open to it, but you know, it kind of just fell by the wayside for like 6 months.
And this is Red Bull you're talking about?
This is Men's Health.
Men's Health. Got you.
So Men's Health. So this is Men's Health. So about 6 months later, they reached out and they're like, hey, we really loved the book sales are doing well. Like your piece is doing well. You know, would you like to step on the advisory board as a nutrition advisor? So I was like, hell yeah. Like, I've always wanted to be in Men's Health. So literally every single episode, my name is in there, which is just a crazy thing to say if I were speaking to my younger self. So like, I positioned those things, and then I started this podcast. And honestly, like, I leveraged, Courtney, those things into this opportunity with Red Bull, because that's how they found me, is the podcast. Mm-hmm. And so like, it was honestly like a 3-year process. And this is why like I'm so big on honoring your ideas, because you literally just don't know. You don't know who's listening. And so for me, being able to leverage those opportunities, getting signed on with Red Bull, it's honestly been life-changing, bro. Like, over the past 2 years, I've had the opportunity to travel the world. I've had the opportunity to give my family a really good life, and I get to be with high-performing individuals. And I think for me, if you're asking like, hey, what's your dream job type of situation, bro, it's like, it's honestly what I'm doing right now. So like, for anyone that's listening, I just want to encourage you all, like, if you're sitting on something that you think is great, just get started. You just don't know what's about to happen.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I have so many questions. Like, like I want to know, and honestly, some of the questions are probably like maybe too much, but like you said, you got in touch with Men's Health, got in touch with you, and then a book deal came about. Where was your where did the credibility of like, how come they offered you a book deal of all people? Like, what were they looking at you and saying, this guy has it? Like, what was it? And how did you put that out into the world so that they can see it? Was it just because you were working in the field and you had a conversation and that the guy caught the vibe and he just, hey, you're sharp? Or like, how did somebody go about planting those seeds? Cause that's a hell of a seed.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, like, back then, I mean, this is something that so I'm the oldest of 5. So my siblings are like my best friends. So like, it's something that we have conversations about all the time, is like, never sleep on the soft skills. Like, everyone is putting so much hard-earned money on like the hard skills, but like, don't sleep on the soft skills. And I think if I look back at that time, Courtney, yes, I had the credential as a registered dietitian. Like, okay, so there's a credible source that we can go to for something like this. But also at the same time, like, now that I'm thinking back, I was also working for a professional baseball team. So it was like, I had credible things that I was doing. And then beyond that, like I said, I connected with the editor and we really connected. And that's where I think, like, lead with the soft skills. And that's where I think some really cool things happen, because like I was saying earlier, like, the vibe was checked and I just started getting opportunities. So I think the way that it started is like, just put myself out there. Like, when I was trying to create and cultivate the idea for this book, like, I had like a general idea, but it was like, I didn't know until I just started like getting into the weeds and getting started. And I think for me, like, I always tell people, like, don't sleep on the soft skills.
What's the book?
You just don't know who.
What's the book called?
Oh, it's right here. Hold on. Can you see it? It's the Lose Your Gut Guide. Very Men's Health.
Oh yeah. That right there, that's going to sell that's going to do numbers. That's SEO certified.
It's SEO. Yeah, it was SEO.
So the Lose Your Gut guide, and so is it when it comes down to a book? I know um, they probably have a certain, obviously it's men's health, it's all about fitness and nutrition, so you fit right in.
Yeah.
But do they come to you with the idea of like the market has this gap and we need somebody who is an expert to fill it, or is it more so we like you, what are some suggestions that you have?
I think with the book, it was definitely the market has this need, like, can you do this? And I think beyond that, being a regular contributor, it's honestly just me. Cause like what my editor had told me was like, hey, just keep your ears peeled. If there's something or a trend, or if you're having clients or asking the same question, it's very likely that readers are doing the same. So he's like, just pitch me ideas. And so like, that's exactly kind of how it's been over the past couple of years, where I'm seeing a trend or I'm seeing something, and I just want to tackle it. I mean, I think one of my most recent ones that I was super proud of is, if we look at like the best diets in the world, it's often talked about the Mediterranean diet being like the best diet for you.
That's so good, because I love that food. God damn. Okay, yeah. You made me hungry. Okay, go ahead. We talking about hummus, right? We talking about hummus and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, we talk about hummus, we talk about olives, we talk about all those great things.
Perfect.
And so part of the positioning for that, where I was like, yo, like this diet is great, but like let's keep in mind like our readership, and let's keep in mind like how diverse, at least in the US, is. Like we're losing out on this very Eurocentric messaging, and leaving out like the foods from the Caribbean, and leaving out like these other very diverse plates, because oftentimes like if we just look at like diet in its own culture, diet culture is very anti-spices. It's very anti-flavor. It's chicken and kale. Like, eat those things and sweet potatoes and you're going to get jacked. But like to me, like I just positioned it as like, hey, like it's actually going to benefit you more if you eat more of a diverse plate, because of the different microbiome, the different things that are going to happen in your gut. So like for me, it's really just keeping my ears peeled on like what's happening, and then kind of just, to be honest too, just my evolution as a writer and a creator of just like, you know what, like this is kind of pissing me off. I would love to talk about this if it's cool with you. And they're like, yeah.
That's awesome, man. You got to do something that comes from a natural place. Otherwise you're going to hit a roadblock, and it's going to be tough to get through that. And
it really is.
And I love the shout out to yellow yam and all the Caribbean foods, because when people were talking about Usain Bolt and why he's so good, I just thought to myself, he probably just grew up eating them yams. Like he just ate just Caribbean regular food, just red pea soup,
solid carbohydrates, man. Solid carbohydrates. Like don't sleep on the carbs.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Now food is definitely one of those things. Food seems like it got you some opportunities and got you into some cool places. So what's a day in the life like for you now? You said you travel the world, you get to work with some of the biggest brands that people know. Like what types of things are you responsible for outside of publishing books and writing articles for magazines? What's your day-to-day look like?
Dude, it's I've kind of positioned it in the same way that I was and still am running my business and being a creator. Obviously day to day, like I think a very big dose of it. And Courtney, here's our play right now, where we get to talk about fatherhood and being a dad and how unhinged kids are. Like, to be honest, bro, like a lot of it is like centering around like my family, because for me, we oftentimes with athletes talk about like, what's your why? Like, what's your purpose? Like, it can't just be about your performance. It has to be deeper. And oftentimes, like, dude, I don't know how you feel about this, but like my favorite televised events are drafts, because you get to see the culmination of all of the hard work, the grit, the sweat, the tears, like all the moments that they had, and they get to celebrate with their families. And for me, like, it's just a really good reminder of like, if you trust the process and you fall in love with the process, at some point it'll reward you. And for me, like if I look at it, like my family's definitely my why. So like everything that I do is centered around what I'm able to do for them. So I think in a day-to-day, I have my routines in the morning. My morning routine has definitely seen an evolution of like starting with journaling and doing breath work and like doing all these things. And now, bro, I'm just kind of at a point where it's like, let me make myself my espresso. I'm going to turn on ESPN and I'm going to have 35 minutes to myself. And then my 2-year-old gets up and then my 8-year-old gets up and then it's dad mode. So I think like that's kind of how I spend my mornings, you know, throughout the day. I'll take walks, you know, I have meetings, and then before you know it, like dinner hits. So, and then I'm back into daddyhood. So it's kind of been nice, dude. Like from a day-to-day perspective, like definitely projects get moved around, and like I have a writing time, and then I have different moments where I like set up for calls with people and whatnot. But it's extremely versatile, but it's honestly just spent around like what's my why? Like, why am I doing all this? And it's honestly to be present, dude. Like I don't want my kids to grow up and be like, we lived a really cool life, but like I never really saw my dad. You know, for me, like having my office at home and whatnot, like, and I'm surprised that they're not knocking down the door right now, but like I can literally go out the door and just like say what up. And I think for me, like that's like the zest of life for me. If I find myself looking at screens all day and I'm like, damn, like I'm spent, like I'm cognitively done, I can just go get refreshed real quick and hug my kids, hug my wife, and be like, okay, all right, I'm chill. So like, I think from a day-to-day perspective, like there's a lot of versatility, but it's all centered around like, how can I become a better individual and how can I become a better father and a better husband?
Oh man, you're nailing it right now, because I tell you, the like I work in a what we like to call a high performance business. We're definitely not solving the world's problems, but it's sports and entertainment. So, you know, you want to put on a show. It's hospitality, so people have opinions about how hospitable you are and what their experience is like. But sometimes things don't go well, and I feel real fortunate that I work on a team where the leader of the pack, if things aren't going well, you know, say the team takes their lumps, whatever, fans are booing. At the end of the day, he says, "Yo, go home and hug your kids. They still love you the exact same." And so, when you have something that grounds you, it's easier to do something for the long run, because you know, the day-to-day ups and downs might not get you off course. Matter of fact, you go back home and get back to that thing that motivates you, and you can endure and keep going. So, man, that's dope. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it wasn't necessarily on the docket of things to talk about. But at the end of the day, this is life, man, right? Like, what do we do all this stuff for, if not so that we can live our best life?
Dude, like, I mean, I just got back from a travel trip, and like I'm pretty much on an airplane at least once a month doing something really cool. But yeah, man, I think like when I leave, like I kind of get in this like proverbial mindset of like, all right, I'm not an elite level athlete, but these to me are elite level things. So how do I get myself into this mindset? And I think as I leave, like I just like ground myself, Courtney, in a ton of gratitude, where it's like, I'm doing this. Like, oh my God, like this is a business trip, and this is going to be dope. Like, I'm going to go perform. I'm going to be my best self. I'm going to lead with my soft skills and come back, and I'm going to have to lock back in. And I think those pieces are super influential in my life, because like, who are we if not people who can ground themselves in gratitude? Because some of us who are privileged to have families and to have a job and to have connections and have a healthy form of community, like, dude, that's money.
Yeah.
I think those things are beautiful.
So, well, as we're getting close to the end here, I want to give you a chance to give somebody some advice. You know, maybe it's your younger self, or maybe it's somebody else who they love sports and they love being around the game, but their road is going to come to an end for whatever reason. Maybe they don't got the skills for the next level, or maybe they've played at the highest level and they've had injury. Like, how does someone break into this side of the industry where you're working with elite athletes and you're a nutritionist? Like, what does the schooling look like? What does the pathway look like to this career?
I mean, so like from a dietitian standpoint, like just looking at like the needs, right? So you're going to need a 4-year degree. I'm not cool with this, but it's what it is. So from now on, you need a 4-year degree and a master's, and then you go out for what's known as a dietetic internship, where it's an unpaid internship for about a year. And most internships cost anywhere from like 10 to 15K just off the bat.
You said
right?
cost,
so like you have to,
not pay,
yes.
cost.
cost.
Imagine paying to learn.
Courtney.
It's like school again.
So if anyone from the American Academy of Dietetics and Nutrition are hearing me, like, I'm not parsing words, like y'all are messing up. So I mean, just like to be a dietitian, like those are some of the things you have to do. But like, I really love, Courtney, your question about like what's next. And I think for anyone out there that is an athlete that is trying to find their way, I'm going to say the same thing to you guys that I say to my younger brother who's in professional basketball, where it's like, if you love this thing so much, it might not love you back right away. But if you fall in love with the process and you utilize your skills and your connection, then maybe you might not get to that mecca of like where you thought you might be, but you can still have a career in professional sports. You can still work with elite level athletes if you position yourself in a way where you are marketable. Courtney, I'm going to actually bite some of the content that I just saw when I did a deep dive of yours, but you were talking about athletes and the power of creating their personal brands. And I think that piece right there, I mean, if you look at a Draymond Green or a JJ Redick, like we probably, or Ryan Clark, the Pivot podcast, right? We probably don't, like, I knew Ryan Clark because he was a safety that just sacrificed his body to no end. And I respected that as a safety myself, right? So like you look at those individuals, they already started thinking about basketball is going to be done, or football is going to be done for me, or my professional sport that I played my whole life and spent so much time and energy into is going to be done at some point. What other skills do I have? You know, it's podcasting, it's communicating, it's having conversations. And to someone who might be thinking like, yo, like I can do that, but like, what is that really going to do for me? You honestly don't know. You just have to get started. You just don't know who is going to be listening on some end or some type of guest that you might have. And maybe podcasting is not in your future, but if you can position yourself in a way where you put yourself around some of these high level performers, at some point, the environment is going to trickle into your life. And that's where I think it's just, dude, the power of community, man. It's just, it's a beautiful thing that gets slept on and not talked enough about.
Yeah, that's a authority by association too, right? You might have been somebody who was a middle of the road player. Like, see, here's the thing. All people know is that, yeah, I played 7 years pro. I played over 120 games. I did these things. People don't ask me, okay, but like, were you an all-star? Like, they don't ask me, okay, where are you in the record? But people don't ask you. That's like when you graduate college. Yeah, but what was your grade point average though? No one cares.
Don't worry about it.
You know, it's like if you have access to certain people, share that access. If you have opinions, share those opinions. I love that advice because you truly do never know. And this is a testament to that. We was hanging out on Threads and just being social on social. Next thing you know, we're recording a dope podcast and somebody's life might change. So I appreciate you taking the time and jumping on here and being so thoughtful with your words because I believe somebody is going to be helped with this conversation. Before we go, though, I have one question that I ask everybody who comes on this show. This is the MVP podcast, so I want to know, who are your 3 favorite athletes of all time, any era, any sport?
Damn, 3 favorite athletes? Cordy, come on, bro. Oh, God. All right. His shoe is on my board here. If I can.
Allen Iverson.
So Penny Hardaway.
What was that? Pennies? I can't see.
Pennies.
The pennies are dope.
The pennies. So I would say Penny Hardaway. I mean, for me, like,
that's the first no one's ever said Penny Hardaway.
Dude, no one says Penny Hardaway, but anyone that jumps on a pod or a meeting, they're like, are those pennies? But Penny Hardaway is definitely one. I mean, I feel like I fell in love with basketball around that same era. And I love the way that he branded himself. Like maybe in my little kid brain, I was like, this is dope. But like, I think as an adult thinking back and like, dude, I think you just started, like, that was your seed into branding. So I think Penny Hardaway is definitely one. I can't not say Barry Sanders. Like I was an undersized running back. Like I wanted to move like Barry. And that's just like in life too. I just want to be swift. Like if anyone says anything like Desi Swift, like cool. That's how I want people to describe me.
That could be a rap name, Desi Swift.
Yes, Desi. Bars. So I would say that my third. Let me see if I can go across sports here. Dude, I don't know, man. I can't not put MJ in there. Like even through like the pandemic probably changed a lot of people's lives. I listen to The Last Dance in the same way that I listen to podcasts. Like I just put it on. Because for me, like if you look at someone and his predecessors, like a Kobe, you know, a Braun, like beyond that, his competitive mindset needs to continue to be studied. Like it's just, it's crazy. Like you look at obsession, like I want to be a couple tiers down below because I want my family to love me. I want my family to love me. But yeah, man, damn, Courtney, if you ask me tomorrow, I'll probably give you 3 different athletes, dude. But right now, in this moment, I would say those are my 3.
Yeah, and you know what? I wore some foams earlier this week. So yeah, I'm with you on, man, you know what? Matter of fact, I wore J's today. I wore forms earlier this week. And if Barry had shoes, damn it, I would have worn those too. Well, he did have shoes. Wait, hold on.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. I think they had the strap because he used to play on that crazy hard AstroTurf that was like concrete that just was like spray painted green. Yeah, he was unforgiving to ankles and he was doing his thing, man. Detroit legend, never won a Super Bowl, but he retired on top. He did what he was supposed to do, made memories, left a legacy, and lived to talk about it. So, yeah. Hey, Desi, man, appreciate you jumping on the pod. This has been phenomenal. Tell people where they can listen to you and where they can follow along with the work that you're doing. Yeah, man. Courtney, this has been great. I know we were kind of like going back and forth on getting on, dude, but I want this conversation to extend. So when we're done here, I need to schedule you on mine because I want to tap into your story, man. I love this convo. Dude, thank you so much for having me on the pod. So where people can find me, I think my biggest passion project right now is my podcast. So wherever you get your pods, the Can't Believe I Made It podcast, I think that's a big place that I'm constantly showing up. Outside of that, you can find me on social at Desi Abeyta. And then if you just hit the link, you can hit wherever I'm at from there. So I was telling someone the other day that like, I don't have business cards anymore. I just point people to my link. That's a 2024 business card. There you go. It's like, do you got an IG? Like I'm right there. Yeah, be there. Yeah. Link in bio, baby. That's link in bio, baby.